yeah.
And now, our feature presentation.
But to teach you and me history. In fact, do you know that if you and I know history, we know the right religion? The only way right now that you can become confused, become mixed up and not know which religion belongs to God is if you don't know history. In fact, you have to know history to know something about God. You have to know history to know something about God's religion. You have to know history to know something about God's people. You have to know history to know something about God's plans and God's purposes. And as I say, the only people who don't know history are the American so-called Negroes. If you know history, for an example, whenever you look at this religion right here, the only way you can explain it is to have a knowledge of history. Why is it called Christianity? It is called Christianity, they say, because it was named after a man called Christ, who was born 2,000 years ago. Now, you know, brothers and sisters, God is an old God, and the world is an old world. The universe has been here a long time. I think all of you will agree that the universe has been here longer than 2,000 years. And you'll also agree that the universe was made by God himself, that God created the universe. God created the people who are on this earth. God wouldn't create the universe. God wouldn't put a sun up in the sky and make 9 planets rotate around it, all of them inhabited. You and I inhabiting the planet Earth upon which we live. God wouldn't have done all of this and not given people a religion. God puts his religion here at the creation of the universe. God's religion is as old as the universe. In fact, God's religion is older than the universe. Now then, since you agree to this, and you'll also agree that Christ was born 2,000 years ago, which means Christianity is only 2,000 years old, this couldn't have been God's religion. If your knowledge of history shows you that God couldn't call his religion Christianity, because Christianity is only 2,000 years old. So if this is the case, then what was God's religion called before the birth of Christ? Can you see the importance of history? Why, if you didn't know history, you'd think that this was God's religion. And you'd be running around here practicing this, wondering why everybody doesn't practice this. Because some people have a better knowledge of history than others do. It is only the people whose knowledge of history is limited who try and jump up and say that Christianity is the name of God's religion. If Christianity hasn't always been the name of God's religion, it now isn't the name of God's religion. God doesn't change the name of his religion. God doesn't even change his religion. God doesn't change his mind. God's mind is made up from the beginning. He doesn't have to change his mind because he knows all there is to know all the way down the wheel of time. He never has to change his mind. His mind is made up. His knowledge is complete. It's all encompassing. Do you understand? So, once you can see, and I think you can, that it's almost impossible for God to call this his religion. What did God call his religion? Christians are the ones who call God's religion Christianity, but God was here before Christians came on the scene. They tell you that the Christians had their beginning back there with the Romans. One of the Roman emperors who supposedly accepted the teachings of some of Jesus' disciples and then named what the disciples taught Christianity. But Jesus didn't even call it Christianity. This wasn't named this until 200 or 300 years after Jesus was dead. Right or wrong. Any history book will tell this. Any Bible will tell this. Any religion, any theologian should have a knowledge of this. And the only Negroes who will contend with this are those who don't know history. And most Negroes don't know history. And most Negroes will contend with it. But when you tell it to the white man, he shuts his mouth. Because he knows that this is true. So then those who have studied a little deeper, they'll say, well, before it was called Christianity, it was called Judaism. Isn't this what they say? Named after a man called Judah. This right here doesn't follow logic. If Christianity became named this after Christ was born, and before Christ was born the religion was called Judaism, then that means that this got its name from the son of Jacob, whose name was Judah. But history tells us that Jacob was serving God before Judah was born, which shows us that Jacob's religion couldn't have been Judaism. And Isaac was Jacob's father. He was serving God before Jacob, his son, was born. Isaac was Judah's grandfather. And Abraham was Judah great-grandfather, meaning Abraham was on the scene long before Judah came on the scene. Now, you couldn't call Abraham's religion Judaism, because there was no such thing as Judaism in Abraham's day. There was no such thing as Judaism in Isaac's day or in Jacob's day. Do you understand? So what was God's religion before they called it Judaism? And this is something that the white man has never taught you and me. The white man is afraid to let you and me know what God's religion was called in Abraham's day, because Abraham was supposed to have been known as the father of all of them. He was supposed to be the progenitor of all of them. He's supposed to be one of God's first servants. One of the first to submit to God is supposed to be Abraham. Now, if you can see this, then find out what was Abraham's religion. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us Abraham's religion was the religion of Islam. Islam only means complete submission to God, complete obedience to God. Abraham obeyed God. Abraham obeyed God so much so that when God told Abraham to take his son and sacrifice him, stick a dagger in his heart. Is that what he told him? Abraham took his only son up on the mountain and was going to sacrifice him to God, showing you that he believed in Islam. What does Islam mean? Obey God. Submit to God. So that this name here, if you notice, has no connection, no association with the birth of a man. This is not a man's name. This doesn't come from a man. This comes from a man. Buddhism was named after a man called Buddha. Confucianism was named after a man called Confucian. Right or Confucius, right or wrong. Likewise with Judaism and Christianity. But Islam is not connected with any man. Islam is independent of any man. Islam is an act, which means submit completely to God or obey God. And when you say your religion is Islam, that means you're a Muslim. So, to clarify this, what must you do? You must have a knowledge of history. If you don't have a knowledge of history, you'll run around calling yourself a Christian, swearing you're serving God. Or you run around saying that your religion is Judaism, you swear you're serving God. If your religion is Christianity, you follow in Christ. If your religion is Judaism, you follow in Judah. If your religion is Buddhism, you follow in Buddha. Do you understand? And they're all dead. And if you follow them, you'll die too. This is where it leads you. Wherever your leader is, that's what happens to you. Now, we who follow the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we believe in Islam. We don't believe in Muhammad. We believe in Islam. He teaches us the religion of Islam. Do you understand the difference? These people they believe in Christ. They believe Christ is God. Oh yes, they do. That he was born of the Blessed Virgin. That's what they believe. Didn't have a father, just a spirit. And then came into the world and was crucified and rose from the dead and went up into space. They believe that. But they believe that because they don't know history. But you'll find the people, if you notice, the Jews have a greater knowledge of history than the Christians do. Do they not? The Christian history only goes back 2,000 years. The history of the Jews go back beyond 4,000 years. Can you see this? And the Muslim history goes back. There's no limit to the Muslim history. If you notice, the Christians can only go back to what they call the Greek Empire. Usually they go back to that's what they call the Occidental, the beginning of the Occident, the Greek Empire, Roman Empire, and so forth.
Lost Sheep Productions.
The Jews have a knowledge of history that goes back into Egypt and Babylon. You notice how they all go back farther than the others. But now the Muslim history goes back. It has no limit. There are no chains on how far you can go back when you're a Muslim. The Christian and the Jew combined go back to whom? To Adam. And they stop right there. And they say beyond him there was nothing happening. Well, this is because they don't know. But the more history they learn, the greater their knowledge of history is, this has an influence on the type of religion that they accept. Do you understand? All praises due to Allah. Another example. What makes the royal family of Europe, or any country, differ from the peasant? Royalty knows its ancestry. Royalty knows its history. This is what makes them royal. You can't have a king who can't trace his history on back into his forefathers. The only way he can be king is to be born a king. But if you take away his history and he doesn't know who his forefathers are, what does he become? A peasant. a common ordinary man. Same with the Jews and the Christians. It's because the Jews have the longest record of history that they can call themselves the chosen people. The Christians can't call themselves the chosen people because their history is not long enough. They can't go back to the time when the choice was being made. But the Hebrews, the so-called Jews, they can go back so far, they can lay claim to that which actually is not theirs. But the reason they can claim it, because nobody else that they're dealing with can go back far enough to dispute it. But the Muslims. Do you understand? So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's mission is to teach the so-called Negroes a knowledge of history, the history of self, of ourselves, our own kind, and by giving us a knowledge of this history concerning